What's doing, everybody? Welcome to First Class Fatherhood. I'm Alec, and before I hit you with today's interview, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the link in the description so you can listen to all of the interviews I've done with so many tremendous dads, including Dana White, Deion Sanders, Tony Hawk, and so many others. Now let's get going with today's interview. All right, joining me now, First Class Father, Jesse Sinsack. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, let's start it like this. How many kids do you have, and how old are they?
3 kids, Noah 9, Charlotte 6, and Carter 3.
Okay, very cool. You going for any more, or are you all done?
All done. All done.
What kind of sports or activities are they all into?
So they all snowboard. I was a professional snowboarder for about 15 years in Colorado, and obviously, that's a passion of mine. So got them all up there doing that. They're into anything that gives you adrenaline rush. My oldest has to drive dad's ATV when we go out. So snowboarding, we own a few horses. My son rides English pleasure, Arabian horses. So, we're pretty busy. 3 kids, home-based businesses. We're going.
Yeah, very cool. If you could elaborate a little bit on that, just take a minute to hit my listeners with a little bit more about your background and what you do.
Yeah, so I grew up in northeastern Ohio. Father and mother both worked, 40-hour-a-week jobs. My dad was a semi-truck driver. My mom worked in an office. Moved out to Breckenridge, Colorado when I was 18. Decided to be a professional snowboarder. Did that for about 15 years. Somehow I got roped into going into reality TV. Filmed a few episodes of MTV Made. And when I finished that, I got a phone call from ABC's The Bachelorette. I thought they had a shortage of dirtbags in LA, so I hopped on a plane, went out there, and ended up winning the show, got engaged on national television. That relationship broke up about 6 months later. I met my wife at a reunion, the first reunion I attended for reality television. And a year later, we started getting married, having kids, and, fast forward, now I'm old and gray and just a lowly tree trimmer. I own Arizona Home Check Property Management, Colorado Home Check Property Management, and Arizona Tree Trimming and Removal.
Yeah, wow, very impressive, Jesse. And so then about how old were you then when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Man, I was 28, I believe, when Noah was born. I'm trying to do the math in my head now. And, I could still remember the day he was born, but I'll tell you what, literally, I feel like there should be some sort of license for having children. It's going to change. You could have the hardest dude ever. My Uncle Jack is the perfect example. He's a Green Beret and Nam and just a hard dude. And, seeing him now as a grandpa, I'm like, man, you're soft. Kids change people for sure. So it's been a blessing, man. I wouldn't trade my kids for the world. They kind of make you, how do you say it, safe. You don't take those unneeded risks anymore that, when you were that bachelor that you would do. You start, evaluating mentally risk versus reward. And that's kind of the biggest thing that I think I would take away from being a dad is I don't want to put myself at risk because then who's going to protect my family?
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and it's always kind of eye-opening, especially with that first kid when, you're in the hospital for a few days and then they take you downstairs and like, all right, see you later, goodbye. And you're kind of like looking at each other like, wow, that's it.
Yep.
Nobody comes home with us for a while here. And obviously, you crushed it in the world of snowboarding and your kids are into it now. What initially got you into snowboarding, and what is a good age to get kids involved in it, and how would you go about that process?
I was a sports kid in high school and junior high. I loved soccer, football, baseball. I played all those sports. And, northeastern Ohio winters are pretty brutal up there. And I had a buddy come to school and said his family owned a plumbing company, Doug Gross Plumbing. And he said, hey, man, I'm going to go snowboarding after school. You should come along. And all my football buddies were like, why do you waste your time with that? You'll never be any good at it. And I was like, what? And so that pushed me to, want to prove them wrong that, I wasn't just a jock. And I would tell, any kid that wants to do something different, I don't know. I guess I live by that, headspace of my kid's probably never going to be the next Emmitt Smith in football. And not that he couldn't be, but he's just probably, the chances of him doing that are, you probably have a better chance of winning the Powerball. So in my head, I have the ability to make him one heck of a snowboard athlete. And also the way that I look at snowboarding is you're kind of like an artist. It's an open canvas. There's nobody out there telling you what to do. Your tricks are your own finesse, your own Monet, if you will. And I've always had appreciation for being kind of that independent person and making kind of your own road. And that's what snowboarding kind of teaches you in a way. So I have a great appreciation for that sport because of that.
Yeah, very well said. It's exciting. I've never done it myself. It's definitely on my to-do list of things to experience with the kids. And so what kind of slid you into the world? I mean, you own multiple businesses here now as an entrepreneur. Were you always an entrepreneurial? You always had that in you? Do you like a lemonade stand kid, or when did that sort of hit you? And how did you go about transferring into that role?
Yeah, I had a kid in grade school named Aaron Verullo, and he was this Italian kid, and he had a paper route. And I always loved that this kid had money. And, he goes, hey, you should think about getting a paper route. It's a really nice way to kind of have extra cash and, like to buy baseball cards back in the 80s. That was a thing. So I got a paper route. I was maybe 10 or 12 years old, and I did that. And it kind of showed me that I got out of it what I put in. If I didn't go out and collect the money from my route, I didn't get paid. And I saw my dad working crazy hours, driving a semi truck for pennies, working for the man. And I got that work ethic from him. Him and my mom, they both just worked their freaking fingers to the bone my whole life. My mom quit a big corporate job doing really well for herself when I was born and took care of me until I went away to school and kindergarten. And I just watched my dad, never home, always working for the man. I thought there's got to be more to life than this. And some local entrepreneurs, kind of took me under their wing growing up. I owned a car detailing business in Cleveland. I was washing cars for people, in the 90s, and pick them up at their work while they were working, and I wash them and take them back, wax them, that sort of thing. And so I've always just kind of, cut my own path, kind of done my own way. And it's always been that, hands-on type thing. I'm a very hands-on kind of guy. So, it just made sense to me. I just didn't understand working for somebody and never, you're at their mercy of if they liked you or not to fire you, etc. So being an entrepreneur, you're the boss, and, it's risk versus reward. And I trust me. I know that I'm not going to fail me. I just, team never quit. I'm sure you've had Jocko on. If not, you should. And, it's just that mentality of I don't need to be better than the other guy. I'm just going to outwork him. I'll get there before him. I'll leave after him. And the dude's going to be scratching his head. It's the Rocky story. The same thing. He just outworked the Russian,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I haven't had Jocko just yet. I'm still working on that, but I've had both Marcus Luttrell and David Rutherford from the Team Never Quit podcast. So I'm down with all that mentality. And we were talking a little bit before we started this here. And when I was a kid, it was the same way. We were hustlers, and we were the kids in the neighborhood that would shovel the driveways. I learned how to do some simple auto mechanic skills as a young teenager, and I was able to make some side money. But today, it seems like that's kind of gone away, and the new hustle seems to be all online. I mean, you see kids that are making six-figure salaries on YouTube. They're starting their own channels, and it seems to be not as much hands-on, but it still takes a certain skill that you got to learn. How do you? I mean, you do all this, out in the free country there. Are your kids into the technology as much, or how do you monitor or handle the video games and the screens with your kids? I know they're still young.
Yeah. So, iPads for us is like kind of Pandora's box of holy smokes. They don't realize what's at the tip of their fingers, but we do. So, we do screen time with them. So they have those Amazon iPad things where I can limit the amount of time, that sort of stuff. But, I don't allow my kids. None of my kids have any phones yet. I'm not that dad. My kid wants to have a YouTube channel. I'm not opposed to it. But like I said, I'm a believer in the old school way, using your hands, the industrial way of America. And those jobs are recession proof. Car mechanics, diesel mechanics, landscapers, all those people that work with their hands. It doesn't matter if we go into another recession. Your HOA is still going to send you a fine if you don't trim your trees or pull your weeds. So, yeah, we live in an age of computers, but we're also one dirty bomb away from South Korea setting off in the atmosphere and computers go away and we go back to living in a Stone Age life like we did 200 years ago. So, yeah, we have computers. We use them. My kids, my 3-year-old's better on an iPad than my mom is, which is crazy. And they know how to use them. But I'm that guy that on the weekends, we go outside in the woods. We learn to start fires. We chop firewood. We run chainsaws. We're that family. We're, I guess, the great American rednecks, if you will.
Yeah, and you know what? On that, another one that's usually big whenever we, bring up the gun debate. That's always a hot topic, a hot button issue. I know that you're a guy that owns guns, that shoots guns. When do you feel like it's a good idea to or have you already introduced guns to your kids? What would you think would be a safe age for you to let them start firing a weapon?
Yeah, my 9-year-old started when he was 7, and every kid's different, right? So this is kind of, something I've spent a great many hours on, which is firearms training with 3 kids, obviously, and I got really big into it when I had a daughter. I would make your kid be able to recite and understand the firearm safety rules before you allow them anywhere near a firearm. There are 5 basic firearm safety rules. Finger off the trigger, know your target and beyond, yada, yada, yada. When your kid can recite those firearm safety rules and understand the meanings and explain the meanings, then it's time to take them out and get them behind a firearm. And not just on paper either. My 9-year-old can run an AR-15 better than most 30-year-old men can. And not because we're gun nuts, but because we live in a day and age when people walk into schools with AR-15s and AK-47s and shoot them up. And if the football coach tackles that guy, I want my son to be able to have the life skill to pick up that tool, know how to utilize it, and maybe save some lives. It's like swimming. It's pass fail. That's what firearms are. He may be at somebody's house one day and that kid doesn't know about him, and he pulls his father's gun out to show somebody and it goes off. I want my son to have that education, that knowledge that will save lives one day. And that's the way that I look at firearms. They're tools like anything else. A bottle of Drano, if improperly used, could really hurt somebody. Scissors, knives, all of these household items are deadly if not used in the proper way. So my 6-year-old, she's around firearms when I'm there and we're cleaning them, loading them, that sort of thing. She never handles them because she cannot recite those firearm safety rules to me, and she doesn't understand them yet. So that's kind of any parent that asks me about guns and their kids, that's my kind of point of reference is they have to know and understand those firearm safety rules. Guns don't walk out of gun safes and shoot people. People shoot people.
Yeah, good stuff. Right on with that, Jesse. And segueing that into discipline, what type of disciplinarian are you as a dad, and is it different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
Yeah, my kids don't get the belt. I got the belt growing up, and that's probably the best thing my dad ever did for me. I was just that kid. I didn't take anything seriously, and I'm sure most kids are that way. They don't think about the consequences. But my kids definitely get spanks, and they know, when dad says something or mom says something, if they don't do it, that's the consequence. You rob a bank, you go to jail. That's a consequence. And I feel like giving your kids consequences and being a strict parent, my kids don't need friends. They can get plenty of those at school. They need an authority figure to teach them, about authority. And that goes back to firearms. My wife and I really butted heads on the whole firearms thing with my 9-year-old and him being able to go out and shoot guns. And one day we were out to breakfast and a couple of police officers walked in, and he got up from the table and walked over to him and said, "Thank you for your service," and shook their hand. My son's around federal agents on, gun ranges all the time. He's not afraid of police officers when they walk up to the car. He knows that all he has to do is comply, answer questions honestly, and he's not going to have a problem. And I feel like that just goes back into, understanding cause and effect. Because I did this, the effect will be this. And that, that goes with anything in life.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing so much of that. So many of the dads that I have on the show, when I ask them that question, they'll always say, "Oh yeah, mine was much different growing up. They had, the belt, the spanking, the paddle, whatever it may be." And they say, "Well, I don't do that with my kids." But yet it's one of the things that they point to that's helped lead them to such a big, successful life. So I don't know if we're doing more damage by not bringing that type of discipline style to our kids, which I think, I spank my kids up to a certain point where I think it's useless at that point, where you can actually communicate with them and they understand what they've done, and then you can punish them in other ways. But I think until you get to that point, I find it to be very effective.
Yep.
You know what? Right now, I'm sure you're in the same boat as me here. I have 4 kids myself. I've added the homeschool teacher now to my resume here. How has the coronavirus been hitting you out there? And how is the homeschooling going for you?
I'll be honest. My wife, God bless her, her birthday was yesterday. She's been doing the homeschooling, the math, the science, the English. Everything. Not me. I've been out keeping the trucks on the road, keeping the guys working, keeping the money coming in. And it's literally, in our house, everybody works, right? Like everybody has a position, a job. My wife's a very successful real estate agent. She owns a home staging company. So for us, the coronavirus has almost shifted us what I feel being a 50-year mentality of going back to the way my parents lived, to where my dad went to work, my mom stayed home with the kids type deal. And my wife's going stir crazy, and I feel horrible for her, which is part of the reason I upgraded her ring. But, she's slam dunked it. I don't know how she's been able to juggle everything from the kids, and just being home and dealing with that. We had a nanny, a full-time nanny, and when this hit, the nanny took a kind of leave of absence, to lock down and stay at home. And, we had a great appreciation for that. And we don't technically need her now because, we're home. But my wife, she's high five to all you moms out there and all you dads that are, stepping up to the plate and being the teacher and being the parent, because it's a lot. It really is a lot.
Yeah, well said. And my wife is a big fan of The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, the whole series. What was that experience like for you to be on there with a bunch of guys going after the same woman? What was that like for you? And would you ever allow your kids to watch the episodes that you or your wife was in?
So I'm totally for my kids watching the episodes. My wife, however, is not. My wife's season, we saw it. My kids actually, in about the past year, just realized that we were on reality television, and they saw my wife's episode. Mom, can we watch this? And she's like, absolutely not. The experience is mind-boggling. I mean, think if, you and I are just sitting here chit-chatting, having a cup of coffee, and a helicopter lands out in the driveway, and a producer walks up and says, let's go. And you hop on the helicopter and you fly over to the old airstrip and meet your date, and you guys go to San Francisco for lunch, and then hop on a little, puddle jumper there and go land on in the middle of the ocean and have, strawberries and champagne on your own private island for 5 hours, and then get on a boat and come back and go to, it's mind blowing, it really is. But it really does happen to people. You're pinching yourself like, what the heck's going on? Is this real? And you're living it. So it is real. But then you come back from that, and, as a guy, you have all these women that never in a million years would have spoken to you. And all of a sudden they want to be your best friend. And my manager, Jeff, at the time said, this was really good advice. You don't need any new friends. You need to really focus, stay the course. And I did. And I met my wife because of it. And now I've, 3 beautiful kids, and all is good.
Yeah, I've had Ryan Sutter on the show here. He was the first guy that won win, if you call it, the Bachelorette. And he had the issue where he was a firefighter, and people were like calling fake fire alarms to see if he would show up. Like, it kind of gets out of control with all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's nuts. Yeah, Ryan, we used to live in Vail, Colorado, and Ryan and Trista used to be our neighbors before we moved to Arizona.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. All right. So what type of values are you hoping to instill in your kids here, Jesse?
Man, I'll tell you, being just your word is your bond. That's what I try to explain to my son. I'm like, you don't need to be the best at what you do. People need to be able to trust you, because we live in a world now where everybody's got a lawyer. You know what I mean? You didn't have lawyers 100 years ago. It was a handshake. And you could take yourself far in business, with honesty and a handshake and doing exactly what you say you're going to do. And that's kind of my main thing with my kids is, that when I tell you don't do that and you do it, you're going to get a spank. I'm honestly going to spank you. You know that. And you start with the small stuff. My son will come to work with me. Hey, you come to work, you're going to make $20. And he knows that if he comes to work and he does a good day's work, he's going to get $20. And I feel like those are the basics of life. What you say is what you do. And if more people did that, the world really would be a better place, man. It's no joke.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there, Jesse. And what's next for you now? You've got multiple businesses running here. You've had so much success, snowboarding career in the books. What's next for you? What kind of goals or plans do you have for the future?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I would love to sell off a couple of these businesses here in the next few years. I think, we built the empire up pretty good. I'm not the guy that needs 2 assistants. If I get to that point, we're going to start selling some stuff. So I'd love to, finish building these up, walk away from a couple of them, and retire with the property management. I think that's something I could do into the late years of my life and continue to kind of feed the meter, if you will.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Last thing I'm going to hit you with here, Jesse. I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for the new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Patience. Patience, patience, patience. There's a million scenarios that we could talk about that you're going to go through that you could have never imagined. Be patient. Things, things that seem like the end of your world right now in 30 days won't even matter. So just be patient. Take a deep breath. You'll get through it. Nothing good or nothing bad lasts for very long.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Jesse Sinsack, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate the opportunity.